Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com. Hold on to the edge of your seats because you are in for quite the ride. It's time for the Granada Forum radio show. Right now, live on air with your host, Granada Wendy.
Hey, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Granada Forum. Tonight we have a very special guest with us, Deborah Tavares. And her website is www.stopthecrime.net. That's www.stopthecrime.net. We're going to do a few quick announcements, and then we're going to bring in Deborah and her guest and have a great time. And it's going to be a barn burner, so you've got a special guest, and you're going to be informed on so much subject matter you can't see straight. So that's going to be fantastic. By the way, Revolution Radio is the #1 commercial-free, listener-supported internet talk radio station in the world. We are located at freedomslips.com or revolution.radio. That's revolution.radio or freedomslips.com. If you'd like to go to the homepage and live equivalent to a cup of coffee, we really appreciate it to keep the programming on the air. If you'd like to make a donation of $100 for Nighthawk, check out Nighthawk. He's got a special thing for like 3,500 seeds on how to grow, plant, and store food. It's absolutely wonderful, so we'd like to thank Mr. Nighthawk for that. I have a wonderful co-host, Mr. Nick Pearson.
Nick's having trouble getting online right now with Skype here.
Oh, Nick's listening. He'll be on shortly.
Yeah.
And I'd like to thank my wonderful producer, Mr. Richard Kane.
Hi there.
Cool. All right, real quick, we do quick two announcements. By the way, we will be at the Alternative Therapies for the 46th Annual Cancer Control Convention. And if you're looking for alternative medicine and cancer control, for alternative therapies, ladies and gentlemen who are listening out there worldwide on the web, www.cancercontrolsociety.com. That's www.cancercontrolsociety.com. Their phone number is 323, area code, that's 323-663-7801, 663-7801, and go to www.cancercontrolsociety.com. That's for all the alternative therapies to cancer and various things going on in your body. And that will be, by the way, September 1st, 2nd, and 3rd, 2018 at the Glendale Hilton Hotel in Glendale, California. Okay. Also, too, the National Health Solutions Expo, which will be there at 5855 West Century Boulevard, Los Angeles, 90045. And that's September 22nd through the 23rd. That's September 22nd through the 23rd at the LAX Marriott. Phone number for her is Melissa, 562. That's 562-212-3479, 562-212-3479. And real quick, just before I bring on Deborah, which will be in about 2 minutes, I like to tell people this because they don't seem to know this, and I'm going to say this very clearly and then bring on Deborah. The Federal Reserve is owned by foreign banks in foreign countries. It's not part of America. In 1913, they voted midnight during Christmas Eve to bring it in, and the Congress voted for it. And it took from 1913 to 1933 to bring in. And 4 things came in 1933. The Federal Reserve, income tax, the IRS, and Social Security. And the real quick too, the IRS is a collection agency for the Federal Reserve. So whether they collect a nickel, $5 million, $50, $500, $5 trillion, none of it goes to America. It goes to the Federal Reserve, which is owned by foreign banks in foreign countries. It's not part of America. So all the money that they collect goes to them. It doesn't go to the America, which is our national debt. We don't get a dime or a nickel, and we never have. So you can always look that up. And one of the greatest books of all time is with G. Edward Griffin. We had a few weeks back. His website is realityzone.com, realityzone.com. And he wrote the famous book, The Creature from Jekyll Island. That's the book, The Creature from Jekyll Island. So I just wanted to say that because it's very important that people know that. I'm going to bring on my wonderful guest tonight, Deborah Tavares. Her website is www.stopthecrime.net. That's www.stopthecrime.net. And I believe primarywater.org. That's primarywater.org. Deborah, are you with us?
Well, yes. Thank you, Wendy and Nick, for having me on the program tonight. I will be introducing an extremely important guest here in a moment or two, but I have some announcements to make. Certainly, I would recommend that everyone stay tuned to stopthecrime.net. Go and check our YouTube channel constantly. We are putting many YouTubes up. We're working around the clock to get information out because we know that the ability to get information out is being fastly eliminated by the powers that be. So please subscribe to stopthecrime.net and make comments under the YouTubes to help other people understand what we're facing, because the enormity of what we face is part of what we're going to be talking about this evening. I do have a water alert, and I'm going to kick the show off with this because we'll get into this on other shows, but it's extremely important to understand the nefarious takeover of the water supply, and this is throughout the entire world. While I'll be talking specifically about a pilot program, which is how the smart meter program started initially as well. It ended up being a pilot program in every country throughout the world, so don't be deceived by the word pilot program. And I certainly would recommend, as a result of what you're going to hear me say in a moment, that you all go and watch the YouTube we have up entitled Water Wars, Stealing Water for Profit and Power. Again, Water Wars, Stealing Water for Profit and Power. It is packed with documents. It is a document expose with proof of Goldman Sachs, the World Bank, Rockefeller, the U.S. bar attorneys, etc., on how they are all working together in this monolithic, ruthless conspiracy that we are in. And I want to say this because this is at the top of our website, stopthecrime.net, and I firmly stand by this. Silence in the face of evil is itself evil. God will not hold us guiltless. Not to speak is to speak. Not to act is to act. Now, I'm going to start out with another quote that I like to remind everyone about regularly, because this is what we face. And I'm hearing some background noise, so if we could look at that, that would be helpful. This is a former FBI director warning from J. Edgar Hoover in 1956. Quote, "The individual is handicapped by coming face to face with a conspiracy so monstrous he cannot believe it exists. The American mind simply has not come to a realization of the evil which has been introduced into our midst. It rejects even the assumption that human creatures could espouse a philosophy which must ultimately destroy all that is good and decent." And to that end, I'm just going to refer everyone to an extremely important video that is posted up on stopthecrime.net on our YouTube channel, and it's entitled Ronald Bernard, B-E-R-N-A-R-D, former Dutch banker. And he is at a judicial commission in London, and it's an inquiry into human trafficking and child sex abuse. And he is an expert witness, and this is his testimony. You will understand when you hear him speak about the Silent Weapons for Quiet Wars document that by now I'm hoping that everyone has downloaded while you still can. Preserve that in your library and read it. It's only about a 41-page document, and it addresses the ills throughout this entire planet that we all face. So with that, I'm going to just tell you about the latest in the water, and this will and is becoming a global assault on all levels of making a water market occur and reduce our food supply. And here is what we have just been told, and this actually will be going into effect on July 1st of 2018. And this has emerged in California. So while you hear me discussing a specific region, I want everyone to realize this is a global plan by Rockefeller and Rothschild. And that's the reason I asked all of you, please, to watch Water Wars, Stealing Water for Profit and Power. So here's what is being told to us in California. A pilot program is kicking off in Ventura County. So for those of you, Ventura County is in the coastal region of central California. And experts say that it may be replicated in other parts of the state. And they say that this is a requirement under the Sustainable Groundwater Management Act and to curb over-pumping of aquifers. This is extremely important. So here's what's important about this emerging groundwater takedown throughout the entire country as well as overseas as well. They're saying that farmers work in strawberry fields in Ventura County in California, where a new groundwater market is going to be replicated in other agriculture areas of the state and country as well. This is a use it or lose it system of water allocation, which has historically required growers in California to irrigate their land or lose their water rights, whether market forces compelled them to grow crops or not. Now, in a significant breakthrough for the state's water economy, a community of farmers near Ventura, California, are about to join a new groundwater market. The buying and trading system, expected to begin July 1st, will allow farmers under the purview of the Groundwater Management Agency to fallow their own land and sell groundwater to other users willing to pay more than their crop sales would generate. I'm going to read that one more time. The farmers are going to be able to fallow their land and sell their groundwater rights to other landholders who will pay more for the groundwater rights for their crops, and that will generate a higher yield than the crops that they're growing. They say that this water market has been in the planning stages for a long time and is being launched as a pilot program that will eventually serve as a model for the rest of the state. Now, I'm going to expand that. It is a model for the rest of the nation. This is a model for the rest of all the countries outside of the United States, Inc. as well. They go on to tell us that this Nature Conservancy has helped design and launch this program, and that this new system creates a powerful incentive for the region's growers who produce strawberries, lemons, celery, and avocados, among other crops, to conserve water. If all you're allowed to do with your water is turn it into an agricultural product, there is an incentive to use all of it, and you end up with a race to the bottom of the aquifer. I'm just going to throw something in right now. Go to primarywater.org. Understand there are various aquifers. Aquifers can be replenished by accessing primary water and pumping that into the aquifers. Important to keep this in mind. The new groundwater market not only limits each farmer to a specific water allocation, but will actually reward them for not using the water and instead allowing another grower to buy it. The market comes at a time when California is working to implement the Sustainable Groundwater Management Act. Such cuts will mean scaled back farm production and reduced revenue, and that's where the market will come in. It will allow for a quick and easy transition that will offer farmers the chance to sell one asset, water, if growing another one, fruits and vegetables, doesn't pencil out. Our farms are being imploded. not only in the United States, but all over the world. And we have a brand new YouTube that we just posted today on stopthecrime.net, and I would urge everyone to watch it. And Nick, if you can just tell everyone the name of that YouTube, I would appreciate that. Nick,
yeah.
I'm thinking that maybe you are muted, but yes,
I'm here.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm sorry, but Skype is really acting up, and I'm talking on the telephone right now instead of talking through my microphone. So if this sounds a little weird, and you might be hearing a chair squeaking and a fan going in the background because it's almost 100 degrees here in Wisconsin, of all places.
Yes, yes. Well, we certainly are experiencing droughts everywhere. Well, I will pull that up.
Well, then the name of the video is "Death to the Farm."
Yes,
and
if everyone
you can find
just
it.
types in, "Death to the Farm," that will get them. So if they type that into YouTube or go to stopthecrime.net, it has just been posted within the last number of hours. Death
I
to
just
the
got
farm.
it up today.
Yes,
you can go to either stopthecrime.net or you can go to the Granada Forum YouTube channel, and you can find it there. And with literally, when you were talking to me today and yesterday, I had to tell you, I had to stop working on it. I had to keep working on it because it would drive me nuts, and I could not even get back to everything in the same day with all the information that was being pumped through there and what was going on with it. And really, people should take a look at this and really find out what's going on with their food.
Yes, well, I want to say that this is part one, and we are coming up with part two. So having said that, I'm very, very anxious to bring on our overseas correspondent. And we expect to have John Weigel, who is in Ireland right now, join us about every 6 weeks or so, maybe sooner, while we still can discuss these kinds of assaults on humanity. And John was a regular contributor when I was on the Rinse Radio Network. And so I'm so delighted to have John speak with all of you to bring us closer together from across the planet, and so that we all understand we are all suffering from the same policy assaults of absolute disregard to human life and absolutely no regard to anything that is good and decent. So here's a little about John. John Weigel was originally from the south side of Chicago. He is a journalist and a writer and a researcher. And about 12 years ago, when a new police station was being built in his village of Leixlip, where he has lived for the past 35 years, he found out that a communication tower was to be included in the plans for a new station. The police also planned to lease space on the tower to private cell phone operators. He became alarmed because his research revealed that the electromagnetic signals for those towers had profound health effects, and the proposed tower was to be placed facing 3 primary schools. And since that time, John has written a number of articles on the topic of electromagnetic radiation. He's traveled to 8 different countries in the last 18 months to explain the dangers that humanity is facing from the proliferation of electromagnetic radiation. He also circulates a regular newsletter and contributes with contributions from people around the world to alert all of us about the dangers that we are facing. And with that having been said, John, I welcome you to Granada Forum this evening, and it is such a pleasure to speak with you again. And I know that we're going to cover many topics, and let's just kick it off by getting to know basically where you are in Ireland, north, south. Talk to everyone so that they have an idea geographically thereabouts where you might be.
Deborah, thanks for getting in touch and giving me this opportunity to spread the word. We're drinking from the same well that's rapidly depleting. First of all, just so you know who I am, from a young lad on the far south side of Chicago, it's a big jump to live in Ireland. Now, one of my first memories, to define who I am, I was thinking about our talk, and I remember in Memorial Day, standing in front of my Catholic church. All of the children were lined up, and we had every year, members of the VFW, the Veterans of Foreign Wars, would come and remember the fallen Americans who died fighting for freedom, abroad. So there I was, and God behind me in the church, and my flag being paraded in front of the whole school. So as a young lad, those two things resonated with me, and I've carried them with me all my life: love of God and love of country. So, and a belief in excellence, that if you're good at what you do, you'll be fine. Well, that didn't pan out. Life never, I'm sure your journey has been much the same, where I'm certain you never intended to, as a young woman, to be chasing this kind of information and coming to the same realization that I've traveled to on the other side of the world. So here I've lived here in Ireland. I live 12 miles due west of Dublin on the east side of the country, on the Irish Sea. Now, Ireland at the moment, we're in the middle of drought conditions. The weather is above 86 degrees, which is very high. We haven't had rain for quite a while. And I was at the garden center the other day, and they told me that, well, we had enough water for the grass to stay green. Now, there was enough moisture and dew to keep the grass green. However, the trees were already under stress. Now, it's predicted that we're going to have these same conditions, which is unheard of. Ireland is known as a rainy kind of place and damp. And so consequently, to have this kind of weather is very, very unusual.
So would you say that the Irish people are awake more than maybe perhaps I see here in the United States with the...
Absolutely not.
With the manipulation of the weather? They're not.
Absolutely not. They have inklings. But we are swathed in chemtrails, day in, day out, from morning to evening. Now, the weather manipulation first came to my attention just last winter or last autumn, when we had a flood, the strangest flood in Donegal. A couple of people died, and there was great destruction of property, and it came out of nowhere. But it didn't affect the whole country. It was very localized around 2 villages. So this was very strange. But then America had a hurricane that was devastating. And so my point is that little flooding incident that was so unusual could have been weather modification testing. They test everything in Ireland before launching
it. I just want to assure you, John, that testing is over. Full onboard weather modification manipulation, weather weapons are now being used to create global markets that they call climate change. Of course, we know that weather weapons is climate change. And I want to ask you, because when you're there in Ireland, you're near Scotland, Wales, England, France. I know you travel significantly. So I'd like for you to let everyone know the extent of the chemtrailing programs that you see in the various countries that you travel.
Well, the reports that I've had is that they're very heavy in Sweden.
Okay.
We saw them in the British Isles. The British Isles, by the way, at the moment, they're nearly on fire. Indeed, Saddleworth Moor near Birmingham in the UK is still burning out of control. So when wetlands like a moor catch fire, something is radically wrong. For a place like Ireland to be more like Portugal, the grass is all brown. That just doesn't happen.
Well,
so
I'm happy that we're sharing this information because, of course, we're not hearing about these conditions here.
Of course not. Of course not.
And I know you're not, although you're watching what's happening here. But that's why we're having this discussion this evening. So there are out-of-control fires now happening.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Now, and this, the point is that while you said it at your intro, while we can still say this, because a lot of information from the states is now being blocked by legislation and Google. And so I can't, for instance, I can't access the Chicago Tribune or other American publications because they're not allowed to circulate their information in the EU.
All right.
So already...
So then they're really caving in on our inability to communicate.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
Exactly.
Yeah, absolutely. So everyone that's listening, get this out far and wide. We have a lot to cover this evening. You can hear that the ability for us to continue these conversations is short-fused, and I can assure you that that's what it is. Because I'll tell you this, John, here in California, there's a bill that was put forth by the same Dr. Pan, Richard Pan, that put forth the requirement for all children in the state of California to be vaccinated before they could enroll in school. He's put forth a social media bill that is requiring fact-checking. And when we looked at the Brookings Institute website about their social media plan, the Brookings Institute, which we're going to talk about in its relationship with Ireland here in a moment, but just so that everyone is well aware of the Brookings, it was funded by Rockefeller, and it is considered a highly regarded think tank. And let's talk about who's in that think tank. Former Federal Reservists, etc. This is a Luciferian organization that comes across as a think tank that has presumably our best interests at heart. There could be nothing further from that fact. And John, while we're talking about the Brookings Institute, I will tell you, and I know we're going to get into smart meters and electromagnetic frequencies and the genocide.
Well, one thing also, Deborah, is the fact that they actually tried to pass a bill through Congress of the United States. It had something to do with copyrights, that you could not reference anybody else's research without being in violation of copyright, and they would shut your website down, they would shut your social media down, they would shut your entire access to the internet down under copyright violation.
Well, this is just an example of what is happening throughout the United States and what John is just now talking about not being able to get.
I had a website, for instance. I had a website. I taught web design for a couple of years. And I had a website about this, about electromagnetic radiation. And I was bombarded with pornography, millions of hits on pornography. And I was concerned I couldn't stop my site from being named as promoting or forwarding pornography. So I gave it up.
Yeah, that's interesting that you should say that. And I want to just say this right now because certainly we've had some whistleblowers from the school system and how the school system in the United States was taken down, where good teachers were taken out of the classroom because they weren't going along with the New World Order propaganda and the false science being taught in the schools. So what they did was they certainly infected their computers with pornography, and those teachers were dismissed. Now, many of the teachers also were murdered, John, because there would be black ops that would go into the classrooms at night and deploy devices that would radiate frequencies and create illnesses with these teachers. And I had a in-depth discussion with a number of teachers that were involved in how this went down in the United States. And I'm imagining that this is a similar practice elsewhere throughout other school systems, even in Ireland, I would venture to say.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah, and because, go ahead.
What in looking at that particular issue, what I noticed is, this is several years ago now, they would pick out a particular, they went through all the professions, teachers, judges, priests, police, and they would find an individual and accuse them of downloading or propagating pornography. And what that did is it had an overall social effect that of every judge, every policeman, every teacher, every priest became politicized and afraid because they didn't want to be accused of having anything to do with pornography. So what you're saying makes perfect sense, and it is a practice. It's not just the odd individual having a look at pornography. It's someone somewhere is doing this. Now, further to that, in a couple of weeks ago, I was at a conference in Horsham in the UK, and I made contact with a man we've had communications over the last few years, and he's primarily involved with helping people who are what are called targeted individuals. These are people who, for one reason or another, are being selected for electromagnetic harassment.
Yes, and torture and trauma.
Yep. So we were sitting in this wonderful oldie worldy English pub. It's been a pub since the 1300s, having a great chat, and he explained to me, so this is hearsay, it's his story to me just a couple of weeks ago, that he was with the British Home Office, and he was called in and assigned to investigate people installing radio equipment illegally, secretly, on the BBC's antennas. This was in the late 60s, early 70s, I suppose. And so they went out and they researched, they found these people, and it was a team of 4 men who were going from county to county. They didn't even remember their own names. Literally, their minds had been played with. And they were installing this electromagnetic equipment, broadcasting equipment, to piggyback signals on top of the BBC signals. That was his part of the assignment, was to find them, not to prosecute. So it's unknown.
I want to add to that. Yeah, I'd like to add to that because we have a worldwide problem with MK Ultra victims and how they are being mind altered and literally having to disassociate. And there's an excellent YouTube up that we've just recently posted on stopthecrime.net. Again, I would refer everyone to this story because it is just horrific what has happened. And it is, again, from that judicial panel in London this year about the topic of targeted individuals and sexual harassment. And it is just profound. It is absolutely profound. And in a moment, I'll find the name of that. But if you'd like to carry on with what you're saying.
Well, what I wanted to do was just kind of briefly go over the history of some of this so people can see that this is a logical progression. This isn't a conspiracy stuff. This is just fact and it's history, and it's the way this whole issue has evolved, or these issues have evolved. So when I'm giving my talks, I call it the biggest lie ever told, that microwave radiation is safe. And I cite two films, and it's worth revisiting both of these. The original Flash Gordon series with Buster Crabbe, because so much of the technology is shown in an infantile way. We're much more sophisticated than they were in the 20s and 30s whenever that series was shown in cinemas. But more importantly is the film, have you seen Forbidden Planet? With Walter Pidgeon.
I'm thinking that I need to. I have not.
That's a great movie, too.
It is.
Well, what we'll do is we'll put that in the show notes of this discussion, Forbidden Planet.
Okay, Forbidden Planet. And basically, it's a story of, what would you call them? American, for lack of a better term.
It was about a group of expeditionaries who went to a planet, and they were going after another group that had preceded them, and what they found was on that planet there was all this alien technology, which because of the way they were, the aliens were, it didn't really make a difference to them, but it really boosted the IQ of any human that tried it, and what it did was it unleashed a lot of a very primitive, if anybody knows anything about psychology and the ego and the id, it unleashed the id upon anybody, and there was no controlling it. It was an uncontrollable piece of technology.
Uncontrolled, and it was because it's the id, it's unconscious, and so that it eventually wound up destroying the whole planet. So it's definitely worth revisiting, just to get the general sense of what's happening now, because I believe that we're creating a real forbidden planet.
Well, we absolutely are, and I want to just give everyone the reference to this MKUltra victim that talks about her journey as an MKUltra victim, not only to the extent that she had to survive by disassociating, but how she was maneuvered by the CIA, her family, and her church to commit horrific crimes, and they would swipe her memory. You can go to stopthecrime.net, go on to the YouTube channel, and we have it loaded up there. It's called Christy Allen, Kristy Allen, Allen, MKUltra survivor. And this is, again, another showing at the forum in London this year. And that's exactly what we have here, is just this type of survivor that can be triggered. Targeted individuals can be triggered. In fact, John, more and more of the population throughout the world will end up being targeted. We're already all targeted because we're all the enemy.
There's 2 points, and maybe a little later on I'll get onto it. One is the enforced use of the drug Abilify, and which America was the first to, the FDA made Abilify the first drug to be equipped with a microchip. So that's quite important. And there is a whole history of this, which is what I want to get to. We're talking basically, Jim Marrs wrote his book called The Rise of the Fourth Reich. Mm-hmm. And from everything that, I've been researching this for 12 years. And it's like pulling at a ball of yarn. It just keeps unraveling, and then you get another ball of yarn. And to try to pull it all into focus is an incredible feat. The Fourth Reich is an extension of what happened in Nazi Germany and in fascist Italy. And what we're dealing with are pretty much the same groups of people who supported the war, World War II, the ones, the survivors of which would come to my school and talk as a child. So the question I always ask everyone is, would you allow someone to put a bullet into your body? Would you allow somebody to inject something in your body? So if you're not going to let somebody shoot you, and if you're not going to allow someone to inject something that you don't know what it is into you, then why would you allow microwaves being shot at you 24/7 from umpteen sources? And those sources are from space.
And those are escalating, the variety of ways in which these sources are now coming, because we're going to talk about
and the number of signals.
Let me respond to that question, though. Would you allow somebody to put a bullet in your body, or would you allow somebody to inject something in your body you don't know what it is?
Yeah.
I'm going to come on the idea that we do that already because we trust our doctors, and they're injecting us with God knows what. I mean, they tell us it's safe and everything, but we really know what it is.
Do the doctors really know what it is?
Yeah, I know.
The doctors don't. And what?
Let me get to the other part of that too. Is would we allow somebody to pull it in our body? We trust our police, and our police are shooting people all the time now. I mean, they claim it and everything like that. But I'm not going to take the pro-police side or the anti-police side. But this is what's happening, and yet we accept that as just a natural consequence of because we've been indoctrinated, and to say, okay, we have a secure country because we have a police force who shoot people all the time, and people accept that. So I'm going to say, yeah, we do accept people putting stuff into our body that we don't know what it is, and putting bullets into our body.
Well, I would like to add this to what you're saying, John, because I know you're using that as a metaphor. And I think what I'm looking at is the fact that what we're talking about is a silent weapons system, where people are unaware that it is not a bullet or gunpowder. It's data, it's frequencies. And so people really are so busy in their lives. They're so diverted, not only by the poisoning of the food supply, the water, the air they're breathing, all aspects of health has been compromised, and people are very, very sick. In fact,
here we have a national program of water fluoridation.
Yeah.
So you can't unless
you fluoridated? Are you fluoridated in Ireland?
Yep, completely. Have been since the 1950s.
Okay.
So, and 60% of Britain is fluoridated as well.
Okay. Well, no wonder all of these countries are in the genocide plan that we talked about recently on Granada Forum. But go ahead, John, because we want to hear what's happening there.
Yeah, so what I'm saying is that these people we're being lied to on a daily basis, and big business has turned the truth on its head, really, because instead of proving that radio at frequencies, non-ionizing microwave radiation is safe, those of us who don't believe it's safe have to prove it. And so they truck out their experts. There's one group, there's a book called Doubt is Their Product. And there's an American expert with ties to Rockefellers who's brought in every time the electricity supplier here wants to build an installation that is so large and so powerful that the locals object. And so William Bailey is his name, and he's trucked out to say, oh no, he's a doctor, has a doctorate in something, and he's named in this book, doubt is their product, as one of these guns for hire.
Guns for Hire. Is that the name of the book?
No, doubt is their product.
How to spell that first word?
DOUBT.
Oh, doubt.
Yeah, doubt is their product. Yeah.
Yeah.
So here we've got J.P. Morgan and Goldman Sachs. J.P. Morgan basically owns Ireland, and they're behind the deployment of the Tetra signal for the police and the emergency services. Now, the Tetra signal is basically the same frequency as the human brain.
Mm-hmm.
So the perils attached to Tetra are incredible. So we go back.
Yes.
So and this is where the conspiracy theory ends, because there are a couple of organizations, NGOs, which are key to this, that are rolling out this global smart grid. The Global Smart Grid Federation and the Earth System Grid Federation. So if anyone says, oh, this is conspiracy theory, it's anything but. It's fact. These organizations do exist for the express purpose of rolling out a global grid. So we have, and Deborah, I think when you put it on your site, you didn't really have the full insight into what you were saying and how true it really was. And this is just affirmation of what you do. You had at one stage a quote from Rockefeller saying, I don't want thinkers, I want workers.
Yeah, that's still out there. Yes, yeah. It was a compilation of the educational system in conjunction with what was in the Silent Weapons for Quiet Wars document, and that is so true, so true.
Yeah. So when Rockefeller is behind a lot of this, because going back to the 1892 Columbian Exposition, Nikola Tesla introduced the alternating current to light the Columbian Exposition at night. It was the first time in the world, and it was done on the south side of Chicago, on the Midway. It's still called the Midway, adjacent to Rockefeller's University of Chicago. So Rockefeller knew Tesla, knew electricity, and this is an ongoing theme through the evolution of this whole electromagnetic controversy. Prior to 1897, there was virtually no electromagnetic radiation. We didn't get the AM radio until the 1920s. And in the 40s, we got radar. And during World War II, the lads who worked in the communications area of the ship would take their breaks and go out and cook their hot dogs sitting under the radar. The radar signal would cook their hot dogs, cook their lunch. And by the 50s, we got FM radio and TV. In the 70s, computers. In the 80s, thanks to Motorola, especially, we got mobile phones. And it wasn't until the 2000s that we finally got wireless technologies on a really broad scale. But it all goes back to Tesla.
And it does. And I think what's important for everyone to understand is how Tesla had created opportunities to benefit mankind, but those that have the monetary control of the system have been able to subvert those technologies and use it for evil. And what we see now with the frequency use is literally to disrupt the human brain. We have a very important document on StopTheCrime called Aquarius Opera Briefing. And John, we received that a number of years back from a whistleblower. And
Right.
they talk about cell phones and how the frequencies just from the cell phones alone are deployed in the Gwyn towers for ultimate mind control. Now we look at all the additional proliferation of frequencies with right now here in Northern California after the fires, they're deploying water meters now.
Mm-hmm.
And also we're finding out that they're doing a CV, a computer vision camera, that is going to show an area of about 150 miles out. They're going to deploy about 20 of these in Northern California. This is a plan for other cities around the country.
Mm-hmm.
But after any kind of a weaponized attack, we're seeing cameras going up. And these particular cameras, we were told that they have a range of 150 miles, real time, all the time, and including night vision, so that they can become familiar with the causes of climate change. And we've been promised increased weather events.
Well, you'll find this amusing, and it ties in with water meters and the current drought, and the speculation perhaps that maybe geoengineering is involved in this drought in Ireland at the moment. Last year, it came to a head, the issue of water meters, and they were installing them in the next town from me, and they had a massive security arrangement, and they would bus the people that they wanted to impress in to see how these water meters would work. Well, the public became incensed, generally across the country. They took to the streets. The meters were installed, but they've never been used. Now, with the drought, my question is this going to be the back door to force us into the use of the meters because they've already been installed?
Well, what is happening with the use of the meters, that's for rationing. And this is a global deployment for rationing of all water.
Yep.
That is the intention. They're certainly conveying the illusion that we are running out of water, and we are not. We have primary water, and again, I cannot emphasize enough for people to understand water is a renewable. Just as we were all deceived by Rockefeller that petroleum came from fossil fuels, aka dead dinosaurs and plant material, that is all disinformation. And we've got to break through to the truth and teach everybody and our children. We do not have the limited resources that we're being sold that we do. What we do have is we have a very, very evil group that is controlling the global markets and the resources. And that is what we have. And we have a very poor educational system. And here's what it says in Silent Weapons about education. It says Silent Weapons for Quiet Wars. This is an excerpt from page 7 of Silent Weapons for Quiet Wars. The quality of education given to the lower class must be of the poorest sort, so that the moat of ignorance insulating the inferior class from the superior class is and remains incomprehensible to the inferior class. With such an initial handicap, even bright lower class individuals have little, if any, hope of extricating themselves from their assigned lot in life. This form of slavery is essential to maintain some measure of social order, peace, and tranquility for the ruling upper class. And that's where we are.
Well, actually, we've gone beyond that, Deborah.
And we have. I mean, that is just a foundational reality of where we have been taken. But go ahead. Where have we gone beyond? Let's talk about that, John.
Okay,
let me just interject this real quick. I mean, if you talked about the education system, and in the United States, we have the Common Core system that got implemented. And if anybody wants to find out just how bad our education system is, go on the internet, go on YouTube, and look up Dr. Duke Pesta, and he will explain to you in probably like a very brilliant lecture why Common Core is what it is and why it's so bad, and why people are coming out of our universities and they don't know anything, and it's designed that way.
Okay,
And
now who introduced Common Core?
Rockefeller.
Well,
we're going to take a break, guys. It's just the first break, about a 1 minute, 2 minute break, and we'll be right back with Deborah Tavares and John from Ireland and Nick and our wonderful producer, Richard Kane. Hold on, don't go anywhere. We're back with Deborah Tavares and www.stopthecrime.net. Hold on, don't go anywhere.
You're listening to Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, 100% listener-supported radio, and now we return you to your host.
Welcome back to the Granada Forum radio program, ladies and gentlemen. Our special guest tonight, of course, is Deborah Tavares. Her website is www.stopthecrime.net. And Deborah, you might want to ask John if he wants to give up his website or some information, if he wants to share that with our audience.
John, would you like to give out some of your information as well?
Well, Deborah, all I can suggest is if anyone wants to contact me, they can do it through you. I don't have a website anymore because of
what I think we'll do, John, because you do send quite a bit of information, because you do get that newsletter out. And what I can do for everyone that's listening, I can post that on the people link of stopthecrime.net. That way they can stay in touch with what you're reporting from Ireland and what you're seeing happening in that area of the world. But we were talking and are continuing to talk about microwave radiation. And I wanted to ask you a couple questions about this, because we know that these are military weapons systems and they're being disguised as civilian communication networks. We all know that. And I wanted to ask you, here in the United States, we're seeing disguised cell towers in trees, in cactus, church steeples, on water tanks. Okay, so you're having the disguised deployment of the cell towers now.
Oh,
of
course.
And
in Portugal, it was so obvious, and it was sad to see storks nesting in these.
Oh, God.
So,
Well, everyone needs to understand this is a weaponized microwave frequencies. This is a military weapons system, and it's targeting all of us.
The thing is,
targeting us all.
They have known from the beginning of this. I'm looking at a paper by a Dr. Erwin Schlepke and another Dr. Esau. From 1932, and this is what it said. Within the biologic effect, we have to see the difference between the ones affecting the complete body and the local effects. The complete body is already being influenced significantly in the wave field from strong short waves through the free Hertz wave, felt by all persons which have to work for a longer period of time without being well protected. There are symptoms, and I'll get to those in a bit, that we are used to from neurasthenics, heavy lassitude during the day, but restless sleep at night. At the beginning, a strange pulling feeling on the forehead and scalp, then headaches, more and more up to insufferableness. Now, just in England, and there's going to be a conference in a couple of weeks about a young lady, a 15-year-old Jenny Fry, committed suicide because the pain became insufferable. So this was from 1932. So now,
John, for the listeners, what I would like for you to do is go ahead and get that document to me, and we will post that in the show notes. So if you would make a note of that, that would be helpful.
Okay.
Because we're talking about the symptoms and how people are committing suicide and will increasingly do so. And that is part of the genocide that we recently found on the Deagle.com website as suicide being one of the major causes of depopulation. Anticipated by the year
it's getting worse.
And it is getting worse.
to finish up this paragraph, joined by the propensity towards a depressive mood and nervousness. Due to our experience, the length of the waves has a clear influence. The most unpleasant ones seem to be waves from 4 to 5 meters in length. One can protect himself quite well with wire cages, which is what Tesla did. But now, according to another writer, this fellow Esau, he behaved as main representative of Nazism among German physicists. After Germany's surrender, the works of Esau were seized by the Americans and analyzed. Missions also took place under the Manhattan Project, which began at Rockefeller's University of Chicago between 43 and 45. The aim was to disclose any German efforts to build a nuclear bomb. The point is that they have known right from the very beginning that electromagnetic radiation causes symptoms, and it's gotten worse because
it's big profits for big pharma and the drugs, and certainly we know that the doctors are not educated and are unaware of the electromagnetic frequency illnesses.
I don't discuss it with my doctor because he said TMI, too much information.
Right. Well, that's the problem that we have everywhere with most doctors, and those that do understand are ending up in trouble, actually. So we just had a doctor here in the last couple of days here in California that was critical of vaccines, and now he's being punished for exempting a 2-year-old boy from all childhood immunizations. And this man is well known in the anti-vaccine movement, and he's being now heavily targeted. And we're talking about Dr. Bob Sears, Sears, in Orange County, which would be in Southern California.
Okay, well,
he's under massive attack.
Yeah, well, you see, what they're doing is the same thing that they did with the different classes of professionals. They're isolating the individual and then discrediting him. And this is a standard procedure, and it's based on the philosophy of Michel Foucault. Foucault wrote the book, The History of Sex. It was a #1 French bestseller for 5 years. And Clinton was the first one to use it. Basically, it's not about sex. It's about the power relationships derived from sex. And they know that they can use innuendo and outright false accusations to discredit someone. And that's what they're doing. And Foucault ended his days in Silicon Valley. So they are using this effort to discredit people in any way possible who disagrees with what they want the general population to know.
Well, I think, for certain we know, though, John, that they're using that as a discrediting so that they can get away with all the pedophiles, the sacrificing of children, the sex trade, and to just literally make it appear that the entire population is doing this, wouldn't you say?
Yeah.
I mean, this is basically where we are. Yeah, this is where we are.
Anyway, moving forward from Slepke and Esau, before I move on, one other point is that in 1928, Rockefeller made a massive contribution to the Kaiser Wilhelm Institute and Max Planck, which was the center of German physics, because they were running out of money. So Rockefeller basically bought German physics. Mm-hmm. That is very important, because coming forward now to the 1930s, just before the war, there's a fellow named Otto Skorzeny. He was an Austrian like Hitler, and there's a picture, you'll get the full story about Otto Skorzeny on the website Educate Yourself. Skorzeny's daughter gave author Eric Orion some family photographs. And included in those photographs is one pictured in the family home of Tesla's business manager. It includes Martin Bormann, Reinhard Gehlen. He was he became head of the CIA's European operation under Operation Paperclip. In the back of the photo, there's Joseph Mengele. Scorzeny came to Ireland and lived here for quite a while, was given residency but not citizenship. Anyway, the other people included were CIA mind control experiments such as MK Ultra, and Mengele conducted. I've stood under the arch at Auschwitz.
Yes, that's
I can
exactly
see exactly the parallels. Now, SS officer and physician Joseph Mengele, the angel of death of Auschwitz, he supposedly was here for a few weeks before he escaped to South America. And
yeah, he's been wafting in and out of the United States. I've talked to a number of people that have actually met up with him. In fact, that YouTube that I recommended in the first hour that is posted up on stopthecrime.net about the MK Ultra disclosure talks about him and talks about the way this was all done. Yes, absolutely.
Your man, Reinhard Gehlen, supposedly boasted that he and Otto Scorzeny murdered Tesla, and whatever the truth of that story is, and it's been said repeatedly that Donald Trump's uncle is the man who confiscated Tesla's papers after he died. That is profound.
Well, certainly there are many profound things, and I will tell you, John, as we're talking across the waters here, I'm looking at how
may I interject a
resilient cities are part of Ireland as well. I was looking because I have a YouTube up called Kill Cities by Rothschild and Rockefeller, and I see that you're slammed in the middle of all of this as well, because I have this article entitled Ireland Demonstrates Climate Leadership with $22 billion Investment Plan. Yep. And this is happening now.
I was just at a meeting, a global meeting at Maynooth University just the other day, and I was leafleting about the smart meters to the 250 attendees. And I was astounded at the level of ignorance that these people had. They didn't know anything about them, and they're talking about sustainable cities, and they're traveling from all over the world to come to Ireland to do that. And they didn't know anything about microwaves.
Yeah, and what's so interesting is while we have flyered and discussed things at meetings too, nothing changes. Certainly the information that we pass on to people doesn't amount to anything that we're hearing about in the media at all, because we're taken already. But here's what it says. The government of Ireland has announced that it'll invest $22 billion to transition the country to a low-carbon and climate-resilient society, aiming at almost zero emissions by the middle of the century. And according to the country's National Development Plan that was recently released, the funds are to be primarily deployed to reduce carbon emissions from transportation, agriculture, and the energy sector, along with flood defenses. And it also says while Ireland clearly faces a very significant task in reducing its greenhouse gas emissions, the current profile of which reflects the particular structure of their economy, action can be taken now to position Ireland to harness significant benefits from realizing a low-carbon economy. And they go on to say, This is including, for example, the creation of sustainable green jobs, sustainable food production, deepening the energy security, and making the environment healthier. The plan includes the creation of a new climate action fund, which is promised initial investment at $100 million on an annual income of $50 million. And they go on to say that taking action is critical for Ireland to help meet the goals of the Paris Climate Agreement. And this is what is so astounding in this document. It says that Ireland's greenhouse gas emissions, again, increased by 3.5%, mainly due to increased activity in agriculture, energy, and transportation. The central goal of the Paris Climate Change Agreement is to limit the global average temperatures as they rise well below 2 degrees Celsius. They go on to say some of the projected impacts of man-made climate change projected on Ireland are more intense storms, rainfall events, increased likelihood and magnitude of river and coastal flooding, and water shortages in summer in the east of the country. And they say to help stave off the worst impacts of climate change, which again is weather warfare, weather weapons, weather control.
It's happening as we speak, as I look at the brown grass outside my window.
Well, listen to this. I think everybody will be... Yeah, let me just get this last little sentence out, because this is what your goal is there in Ireland, and it's similar for us here in the United States. In fact, this is a goal similar to all of the countries throughout the entire planet. But it says, to help stave off the worst impacts of climate change, Ireland aims to reduce its greenhouse gas emissions by 80 to 95% by the year 2050, in line with what science says is required. 80 to 95%. That's not possible.
Absolutely not. But now you have to put this into context of who prepared this national plan. Historically, it was a company called Ove Arup, A-R-U-P, or Arup and Associates. They are a global engineering company, and for them to come to Ireland in the 90s and early 2000s and do a plan, to create a plan for the whole country's infrastructure, was incredible.
Well, that's here in the United States and elsewhere.
That's what I'm suggesting, and if you look at who Arup and Associates are and where their jobs are and their contracts are, they're global engineering. Yes. They're pushing this agenda as an engineering company. People don't pay any attention to it because, well, that's what they do. But anyway.
That is exactly what they do.
Yeah, so Arup and Associates, and that is a vehicle for the school. ARUP.
Yeah, for everyone, ARUP. Important to understand that. And I also, at this moment, would like to recommend that everybody take a look at this 20-some-odd page booklet entitled Anatomy of a Con Job by John Truman Wolfe. Read that and understand that the new markets are being created out of falsifying science, and that's what we're being built into now. Falsifying science, really literally, the microwaves are going to massacre the global population in many ways. We will not survive. But go ahead, because I want to talk about the extreme projects in Estonia. This is just
good, because that is that's another
subject. That is fascinating, and it is horrifying at the same time.
It is, because the people there are, well, they're getting ready for a war, but I'll get to that in a moment. I just wanted to try to update on the history of this. So when Mengele escaped to Argentina, his experiments in electricity disappeared through his mentor, Dr. Ottmar, O-T-T-M-A-R, Verschuer, V-E-R-S-C-H-U-E-R, at the Kaiser Wilhelm Institute. So Mengele's work went to Verschure at the Kaiser Wilhelm Institute that Rockefeller owned. Okay, so they knew how to inflict pain, misery, and to kill people, and they also knew the damages from Dr. Schlepke about what they were facing. So they have known for 85 years or thereabouts.
Mm-hmm.
So
this has been a plan that has been organized for many, 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 many decades. And it's
yes,
now, yes,
absolutely. And by the 1940s, I have a report in front of me here from, it's a scientific paper by H.M. Hines, and how they were able to inflict, and it was funded by the U.S. Navy, by the way, how they were able to inflict cataracts on rabbits. And the reason they, after a very short period, the rabbits developed cataracts from microwave radiation. So they were using it as weapons and looking at it back then what's the date on this? 1946, 47. Researchers at the University of Iowa.
I want to ask again that this is a document that you send over that we get into the show notes, because I'm certain that everybody is quite eager to look at the date of the beginnings of this literally deploying these weapons upon us, and how long they have known the dangers. So go ahead. Continue.
Dr. Hines described lenticular opacities in rabbits and dogs and testicular degeneration in rats. So they've known from the 1940s what they were doing. Mm-hmm. Microwave syndrome, David Carpenter is very good on this. He has a paper from 1915 going over the same thing, the issue of microwave illness and how it evolved in Russia from the people working in the factories, and is reported again in the World Health Organization before they put a clamp down in 1973. It causes injury of cell membrane function in the brain, and the efflux of potassium from cells seems to be the first sign of disturbance in the membrane function. Martha Herbert from Harvard last year, 2 years ago, refined that and has proven it has been proven time and time again that the brain cannot take this, and it affects the cell membrane and potassium. Poland again in 2008. Finally, Sam Milham, who's a great man, a gentleman. He wrote the book Dirty Electricity, Electrification and the Diseases of Civilization. And there it is. He said it back then. Suicide, and it has an alarming connection with EMFs. There are studies 25 years old showing that people who live near power lines and cell phones have a higher propensity to commit suicide. And the power lines also...
At this moment, I would like, what I'd like to tell everyone right now is to go to stopthecrime.net, print off the health, the symptoms as a result of the microwave radiation, because you're going to see a full list, and you're going to see many of the things that John has already discussed. And print this list off and know that that we're all confronting a variety of these kinds of repercussions from all of the frequencies in the environment right now. Despite where we're located, we're all suffering from various types of disruptions. And just know that your doctors are not equipped to treat you, because they don't look at this as any type of a reality in their medical journals. So continue, because you're bringing out some old documents that people need to know existed many decades ago.
This is developed with the help of some very wealthy, very powerful people, with the goal eventually to implementing that little sentence from Rockefeller on your website. In the Moscow incident with the U.S. Embassy, where the Russians were bombarding the U.S. Embassy with microwaves, 2 ambassadors died, a 3rd one developed leukemia and bleeding eyes. At least 16 women developed breast cancer, and many other staff suffered immune system disorders.
And recently, too, in Cuba, they used a weapons system on U.S. Diplomats, as well as in China recently. So this is now the method in which it's acoustic weapons system. And also, I would recommend everybody to type in and read Operation Crimson Mist, because this is microwave frequencies and how they were used by the United States in Central Africa to create and cause the Rwanda genocide in the mid-90s, and how that then transitioned into the way that we attacked during Operation Desert Storm. We used the same microwave technology.
Okay.
And it is a global assault, John. I mean, we're seeing this happening everywhere. I mean, the assault is on all of us. I look at the disguised cell towers, and now the deployment of these small cells are occurring all over where we're living. In fact, they're anticipating deployment in their Verizon, who does work with Rothschild and Rockefeller, and as well as the other telecom industry companies as well, is looking at, there's a psychological document on the Brookings Institute about how the Brookings has helped the telecom industry identify how to get these frequencies into cities that are maybe expressing a citizen revolt against them. And what they're saying is that the 5G is the backbone for all required future technologies, because Google will become the operational aspect of all cities through wireless, and there will be many, many attachments to the frequencies, and we're seeing all of that occurring now. Are you seeing that in Ireland, where you're now being told that you have to transition out of all of your old appliances to all of these smart?
Not yet, no. But what the way they're very devious. What they're doing now is if you go into a retailer to buy a new television set, especially Samsung. Samsung televisions, refrigerators, Apple computers, they are already emitting electromagnetic signals looking for the smart meters, even though we don't have them. So people, and you can't turn it off. Now, I have been told that people have been able to turn off this signal from their Sony televisions, or they have demanded people from Sony to come out and turn it off. So,
well, I think people need to hear what you're saying right now, because all of the appliances are emitting hazardous frequencies in our home.
Exactly.
And here in the United States, we are going to be transitioning, in order to meet our required reduction of greenhouse gas emissions, we have to transition into all wireless kitchen faucets and shower heads, etc., that will be working in conjunction with the smart meters.
The fact that you're being
we're moving
forced
into smart homes.
The fact that I wrote the article, the first article on the smart home technology. It was done here in a town called Kilkenny 6-8 years ago, and they were selling it on the basis of the fact that people who could turn on their heat from
remotely.
Spain while they're on holidays and things like that. So, and the developer then curiously wound up the developer wound up as a candidate for the presidency of Ireland. So,
well, I want to be sure that we get into this. Yeah, I want to be sure we get into this extreme project in Estonia, because they are energizing Estonia. Estonia is being used as a model wireless city where everything will be wireless. You cannot function unless you have this smart ID card that recognizes you for any and all transactions that you want to perform.
Absolutely.
And also, and I will add to this, the World Bank is behind all of this, along with Goldman Sachs, Rockefeller, and Rothschild.
I thought I thought this was absolutely fascinating. They announced the mandatory rollout of smart meters in Europe. They announced it in Estonia. Who ever heard? People don't even know where Estonia is. In Ireland, the news never got here. But by announcing it in Estonia, they have set the precedent, and it's then they say, well, we have to because this is an EU directive. It's the European Commission is a non-elected body, and the former chairman of the European Commission, Mr. Barroso, he attended the Bilderberg meeting just last week or 2 weeks ago as CEO of Goldman Sachs. So there you have it. You know, it is so patently obvious. Poor little Estonia, they were so repressed under the communists, and now they have some consumer goods, and they think they have a bit of freedom.
Well, they're actually proud of the fact that they are the Estonia now. And when people look at this YouTube, and I would recommend that you type this in and watch this, it's a video called Extreme Project Estonia, Energizing Estonia. And then you'll see a number of other opportunities to watch and see what is happening in Estonia. It is literally reshaping commerce in its totality. This is extreme disruption, and this is what is headed for every single country to end up like this. And people are unaware, because Estonia only has a little over 1 million people.
Of course.
And like you said, who heard of them? I mean, right across from Finland in that area. And because it only had 1 million people, and they rolled out these smart meters without, the Estonians even being aware. I've looked at some articles that said they weren't even aware that this was rolling out, just as you said. Consumers unaware of smart meters ahead of the EU-wide rollout. And they go on to say that...
By the European Commission issuing this diktat, that lets every single government off the hook. They say, well, we have to do it because it's the EU. The UN is using a similar tactic around the world by saying that they're giving this technology to deprived countries, when in effect what they're doing is they're harvesting. They're harvesting information. I mean, people who can't afford food, and they're forcing them into an electromagnetic environment. The same Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania. The 3 countries, by the way, are breaking away from the Russian power grid, which is interesting. So that's seen as possibly a forerunner to a war. So,
now, why would you say that? Because a power grid is a power grid is a power grid. And,
no, because
they can all be hacked. They can all
be hacked. But the point is that they are now proud citizens of the EU. Russia can't control them directly. So, Anyway, I have a couple of points aside from the history and the symptoms and everything. I'd like to mention something that's happening here because it's heartbreaking. And this is not a whistleblower. He is an industry practitioner. He has been a networker. He is a consultant. He began his career with IBM 20-odd years ago, and he has 2 young kids in a school in Greystones, which is right on the coast of the Irish Sea. And they installed a Wi-Fi network in the school. Now, as it turns out, I don't want to name him to at this moment to protect him. But I'm looking at his document here, And he says the classroom with the lowest power level is room 10. It's emitting 9 times more power than the principal's office. The box in room 9 is emitting 129 times more power than the principal's office. The box in room 5 is emitting 102 times. Room 19, 34 times. Staff room, 70 times. And in the secretary's office, 118 times more power than the principal's office. The point of this is that the school has 30 laptops and 23 Wi-Fi antennae, 23 boxes. Now,
and they're probably with smart meters as well, right?
Well, we don't know. No, they're not smart metered yet. But one Wi-Fi box can support between 80 to 256 laptops. The school only has 30. St. Bridget's Wi-Fi system is capable of supporting between 1,840 and 5,888 laptops in a primary school. The children are being cooked alive. I had a similar situation in my local school where the children, I brought a physicist originally. He's an Irish physicist, worked at the Scripps Institute and gave it up because he didn't want to work on weaponry. And he came home. And he brought his equipment. We took readings in the classrooms closest to the antenna, which are about 90 feet away from the first classroom, and he welled up. And he looked at me with tears in his eyes, and he says, "They're killing these kids."
Mm-hmm. Now let me ask you: in your travels, do you see Barry Trower? Because of course, when he came here to Portland a few years ago.
Yeah,
we have that YouTube up, The Cooking of Humanity, and so I know Barry has been working around the clock to try to get this information out. He considers this to be a global genocide program.
Oh, it is. It is. Absolutely no doubt about it. And in fact, I wanted to get St. Bridget's in. I wanted to also explain, and maybe another time I'll explain how this whole thing is being done through subversion, through avoidance of the constitutional process and the government architecture for telecommunications infrastructure is totally unconstitutional, and nobody is paying attention and nobody is taking any legal action against it. It has to be dealt
the
with.
reality, though, is John, very quickly, and I want you to continue, but the reality is, such as it is in the United States, that our legal system was set up by Rothschild. All of the attorneys and lawyers carry bar cards, British Accreditation Regency. We do not have a structure to represent us. As a matter of fact, we are the enemy. We're all the enemy. That's fairly obvious globally. Go ahead.
As explained to me, the legal system in Ireland, when Ireland became, in 1917, when Ireland became a republic away from the British Empire, 2 parts of Ireland stayed with England: the legal system and the medical system.
So
the point is that Ireland is still tied to Britain and the power structure there. So the legal system is not going to give us any justice. Furthermore, it's tied to the concept of capitalism, where when a lawsuit is taken against a government, the government takes it as a threat, a financial threat. So compensation must be avoided at all costs. In the case of electromagnetic radiation, they choose to ignore it. If you go to a doctor...
Well, that would be like the pharmaceutical industry. You cannot sue any of these agencies.
Exactly.
So you were talking about the testing with this equipment and the tears in the eyes after the equipment was tested, and the comment that was made, they're cooking the kids.
Yeah.
So how far has this information gotten out? I mean, certainly
it went. The principal resigned and was replaced with a new principal, and then the board changed. So nothing was addressed.
Okay.
Nothing.
Okay.
So it's the same as St. Bridget's in Greystones. Nothing changes. They are not allowed to change. Well, I can
tell you. Yeah, I can tell you that we're being plagued then everywhere with similar strategies. I was just looking at ICLEI, International Environmental Initiatives, and they have a new strategy for climate action sustainability. And I actually found this when I was searching the status of the resilient cities in Ireland.
Dublin's an ICLEI city.
Yes, well, we all are, and we all are under the auspices of the controllers, the World Bank, Rothschild, Goldman Sachs, etc. That is the theme. That is what is behind all of this genocidal assault on all of us, because we're useless eaters, and that's why I recommend everybody read Silent Weapons for Quiet Wars. So go ahead. We have a few more minutes here, John, and I'd like you to get into anything else.
A couple of things. One is, this is hearsay. I have yet to verify it, and I'll see how, or if I can at all, but I was told just this week that half the children being born in Northern Ireland are on the autism spectrum.
Well, we have one in every 36 now here in the United States.
Okay, now imagine a society unable to look after these poor children in 20 or 30 years' time. What is it going to be like? Will life be bearable with these people, no one to care for them, and homeless?
Well, absolutely.
We're even if there are large groups of these unfortunate people, what is going to be done with them? So the sad thing, though, too, is that they're void of the gene of empathy, and it's an environmentally caused spectrum disorder, and they can be very brilliant. Also, like there has been certainly references that Bill Gates is on the spectrum and others as well, but they can be very dangerous, just like the MK Ultra victims who don't have, just like that. And the other point I definitely, by the way, Professor Ollie Johansson from the Karolinska Institute.
Yes, I've talked to him a number of times.
Okay, well, now he is in forced retirement.
They finally got him out of his lab.
They got him out. The woman who was the primary person to get him out was the rector, Harriet Wallenberg. She was given an honorary doctorate here at Trinity College by Mary Robinson, the former Commissioner for Human Rights at the UN. And just last week, Hillary Clinton was given an honorary doctorate by the same woman. And
you gotta be kidding me. Sorry.
Pardon?
Sorry.
And Mary Robinson has the Mary Robinson Climate Justice Foundation, and among the most prominent members on this foundation is Richard Branson, who's rolling out 5G in Ireland.
Now, explain, or just let everyone know who Ollie Johansson is. He has worked.
Ollie Johansson was probably he was at the Horsham meeting with Dimitris Panagopoulos from Greece and George Carlo. Ollie was probably the first one to note that exposure of pregnant women and their fetuses to EMFs from computer screen, the old cathode ray tubes, computer screens, was putting the mother and child in jeopardy. So now we know he has been proven right. He has been harassed. He was forced out of his position after a year. They couldn't fault his science, so they attacked him personally and, most importantly, financially. So
well, Ollie was very helpful here in California when we were rallying against Pacific Gas and Electric, and getting information to the Public Utility Commission. Again, all Rothschild run, but yeah, that's
but they are using psychological tactics on him. His footsteps outside of his windows. He's recently divorced. His life has been made an absolute misery for someone who has been so dedicated to helping humanity, and so it's a day-by-day existence for him as it stands.
I am very, very sad to see that, but I think when people recognize the type of assaults that occur through targeting of individuals and gang stalking, that people will understand what is happening to Ollie Johansson, a wonderful man working very hard to get the truth out. So we've got just a limited amount of time here, John. I'd like you to get into the final couple of minutes of the wrap-up, and we're going to look forward to getting you back on because we certainly need to connect again while we can. So go ahead and take it away.
Well, while we can is very important. My circumstances have changed. I use a service called MailChimp, and I send all the information I have to every elected official in Ireland, and MailChimp notified me that they would no longer deliver my updates because I needed proof that the people I'm sending them to want to receive them. Now, that is a total intrusion into the democratic process.
Well, there is no democratic process. We're the enemy, and now that we can see the breaking of the dam, so to speak, with the populism now, with people understanding what's happening, the internet just got away from them, and we've been able to talk. That's how I met you, was through the internet and our information that we were sharing for so many years. And so I think that's what we're seeing. We're seeing a shutdown so that we can no longer communicate.
One night I sent out 480 emails because it was under the 500 limit that Google sets, and 400 were returned.
All right, well, I accept your emails, and I would like you to send them so that we can post them on stopthecrime.net. They will be posted under people so that everyone that is listening right now can hear what is happening in Ireland and Wales and the UK and other countries. You even talked about Greece. You talked about Estonia. You covered a swath of area there that we're not hearing anything about.
Oh, and India. India is another one. Australia. Australia is rampant with this, and Australia, like Ireland, is not a government. It's a registered corporation, which is vastly different. And Ireland is registered as a corporation in Washington, D.C. So they're using corporate law rather than natural law and the democratic process. That's basic.
That's been the foundation of what we try to get across to people, that it's an illusion of a government in the voting system. We're getting up to the last moment, John. I want to thank you so much. I know that the time change in Ireland has got you up at the wee hours of the morning. But everyone that's listening, I know, is very happy to hear what's happening. And we're going to stay connected with you again as long as we're able to. And I'll look forward to receiving some of the information we spoke about on this show so that we can get this posted in the show notes, John. And again, just thank you. Be safe. Be well.
And the same to you, Deborah. You have done a Trojan job. I know how difficult it is to get the truth out. And if this is the only way we have, then we've got to do what we can do to warn our fellow human beings.
Absolutely, I absolutely agree.
And to my original thesis, to honor the American ideal and our God.
That's absolutely correct. We have a couple of minutes. I'd like to let you close this out, John. So go ahead, say what you'd like to say.
Okay. Well, first of all, I want to say thank you to you. You deserve kudos on all fronts for fighting so long and so hard with so little return. You have a following around the world that you don't even know about, and it's just so important, to try to get this word out. People have to take some responsibility, even though they've been lied to and the truth has been hidden from them, to protect themselves and their children. In the film Schindler's List, one of the characters tells Schindler, if you save one life, you save the world. And that's what we're trying to do. And
well, I want to thank Granada Radio, too, because if it weren't for them, you and I would not be talking
of course.
Now.
That goes without saying.
And they are on the forefront, too, of making certain and helping to get this kind of conversation up and out. And this, of course, will go up on YouTube, and we'll insert documents that we talked about as we were discussing it in the show notes and or in the YouTube. So if you can get what you recall discussing over to me, particularly those documents back in the 30s and 40s, that would be terrific. And we'll go ahead and look forward to another report. Now, if something should come up that is absolutely diabolical, you're seeing a movement that's happening faster than it is happening now, please let us know. And we will get together and do an emergency broadcast, because we are really literally, as we discussed at the beginning of the program, seeing things rolling much faster than any of us could have ever have imagined.
We're on the cusp of some desperate events. Just to give you one quick thought, look at the Schumann resonance of the Earth. It has gone up.
Please talk about that for a moment, because we have a couple minutes left. Please share that.
It has spiked 5 times the normal background radiation that humanity has evolved in, and the rest of Mother Nature. If the spikes continue, the planet can actually fracture. This is 5 times the natural background radiation. We are not equipped to deal with this.
No.
And people better wake up, whether it's they are sending, they were scheduled to send EMF signals through the Earth this month. I do not know if that has anything to do with the actual spiking, but you can look it up on the internet, and this is critical. We have earthquakes in Hawaii and in Guatemala. We had an earthquake in England last week. In England, a 3.9. That's pretty high for a place that doesn't normally have earthquakes. Something is happening to our planet, whether it's man-made.
Absolutely.
So that's my last bit of information for the day.
Well, I just really want, again, to thank you, and just be vigilant. Let us know if there's anything of tremendous urgency so we can get you back expeditiously. We're going to look forward to working out a schedule where you can come on, as I said in the beginning, about every 4 to 6 weeks, dependent upon the types of policies that you're seeing deployed onto the countries and what you're hearing happening there.
Excellent.
And and what we're looking at here in the United States is a planned genocide of about 83% by the year 2025 in the documents that we have discovered.
Yeah.
And for those of you that are listening, the frequencies are mass massacre. And as John so eloquently explained in these documents that were presented in the 30s and 40s, they knew. They knew. Experimentation has long since been over. They've only managed, of course, to create larger weapons systems and deploy it. Look at all of the cell towers that are just all over. You can do an antenna search or a cell tower search in any country and get the results of that search. It won't show them all, of course.
Deborah, with 5G, that'll no longer be necessary because they're going to be every 500 feet.
Well, actually, Verizon just announced that they have come up with a new method or a new small tower that can broadcast every 2,000 feet, which is why here now they're deploying these small cells on the utility poles. They're completely able to bypass the local cities in all respects because they're working hand in hand with Rothschild to deploy these on the utility poles, of which the cities here have absolutely no jurisdiction. And in fact, you may want to share the YouTube we have up on stopthecrime.net there with your friends in Ireland and elsewhere. It is on stopthecrime.net, and it is Verizon CEO. And I would listen to that. It's about a 15-minute YouTube. He talks about how the idea of, and everyone got the information on the deployment of the small cells from the IEEE documents, Institute for Electrical and Electronic Engineers, every 200 feet. But he's saying, oh no, that was a myth. We're at every 2,000 feet now, and also we discovered that they're deploying the small cells in the manhole covers in Japan. So by the time they deploy this system, they're going to have methods and ways in which to deploy these in ways that we're unaware of, and they're going to be
including the street lights.
Absolutely. So they're deploying the street lights there in Ireland as well.
The way it's being done is that the county councils no longer have responsibility for the street lighting. They make contracts with outsiders, and they do what they please. This is a public-private partnership, which is a definition of fascism.
That's exactly right. We're having the same situation here. In fact, we have discovered, as you mentioned earlier, about the damage to the retina of the eye. All of these LED lights are causing tremendous health problems, not only with eye damage, macular degeneration, and
they're offensive just to look at them driving down the street or to be in the light. They're offensive physically.
Yeah, we have a YouTube up, and we're heading at the top of the show again. I cannot thank you enough. John, thank you
Deborah, thank you for your work and the opportunity to share this with other people.
Thank you.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for listening to the Granada Forum radio program. Our special guests, Deborah Tavares and John from Ireland. We thank you so much for joining us, and we'll see you next week.